Good afternoon, Automating Success followers. I have the pleasure today of having Anthony. It's a pleasure to have you on Automating Success, but go ahead, say your last name properly because I just really didn't do you any justice.
Thank you, Joe. And I'm going to help you out in a minute. But so it's Anthony Giagnacovo, a good Italian-Irish name, 100% Italian. But a lot of my friends call me Anthony Covo for the obvious reason. So, Joe, you're now become part of the family. You can call me Anthony Covo, or as my old boss used to say, "Hey, Covo." That was it.
So, Anthony, the problem is the people that listen to this that are my family know I'm half Italian myself, and they're going to be upset with me that I butchered an Italian name because, I do have the English last name from my dad, but on my mom's side, they're all going to be pissed off at me, but that's okay. At least you brought me into the family, and I appreciate that. For the sake of the podcast, I'll just call you Anthony, and then we'll get around all of it. But Anthony, I think that you have a lot to offer in the space of automating people's success. Why don't you go ahead and talk about, your company CallRevu and kind of tell us a little bit about what you guys do.
Yeah. So CallRevu is it's an impressive organization. And so the name is CallRevu because what we do is we actually analyze and listen to communications that occur, usually telephone calls, but they could be text and other types of communication. And we review those using technology, in many cases, AI technology that we've invented and developed over the years. But historically, we used to do it through humans. And I want to talk a little bit about that because it's important. So in 2008, a gentleman by the name of Chip King invented this company. And he was a dealer. And he is a dealer principal working in a very large Toyota dealership in Maryland, and he was about to fire his ad agency company. So he said, you know what, I'm spending $20,000 a month with you guys, and I'm not getting a lift in my advertising spend, and I think it's done, and I want to go somewhere else. And the ad agency president called him up and said, Chip, the problem isn't us, the problem is you. And Chip said, well, what do you mean me? That can't be possible. He goes, you know what, and the gentleman's name was David. David said, I'll do this, for an entire month. I'm going to listen to your calls, and I'm actually going to provide you feedback on the calls. And, if I'm wrong, you've got a free month of advertising spend. If I'm right, well, let's go fix it and continue this partnership. So by the third day, David had provided him all these information. So what David had done is he had taken people off the floor and had put headsets on them and said, listen to every recording of the calls that happen. So you're going to take the calls, you're going to listen to them, you're going to transcribe them manually. So you're going to put them in an Excel spreadsheet, and we're going to send that back to Chip, and we'll tell him what the problem is. On the third day, Chip said, you know what? I love what you're doing, and you're absolutely right. The problem is me. The problem is my team and my people. When I listen to those calls, I see all these opportunities that we're missing. I hear all these problems that we're having. I'm hearing how the dialogues and conversations are going that are bad. I need to fix that. You know what I want? I want that program that you just provided me with. And he goes, Dave said to Chip, that doesn't exist. This is me bringing people off the floors, listening to your call recordings. He goes, oh my God, that's my product. I'm going to build that. And CallRevu got invented. We were the first to market with call monitoring solutions. Now, call tracking always existed. And if you know what call tracking is, I'll just briefly explain it. Calls, a telephone number was tied back to an ad. People would call that ad and that'd say, oh, there it goes. That ad got triggered and I can monitor it because it got tied to this telephone number. And that was basically it. What CallRevu did is took the tracking that everybody was doing, and we were doing it as well, and then started analyzing what was going on those calls. And then from those analytics and analysis that we're doing, we were uncovering what was going on the calls. And a lot of these are missed opportunities. And Chip was able to recoup his cost in no time. Our customers have an ROI that's less than a month, believe it or not, which means that in 1 month's time, they're able to figure out opportunities that they've lost or they've missed out just by our capabilities of analyzing and providing opportunity alerts. They'll say, hey, Joe, did you know Anthony was on the call before with the customer and he missed this opportunity? You should follow back up with that customers. And we got tons of testimonials. So I encourage your fans to go out and listen to the testimonials that we have on our website on callrevu.com. There's a lot of, you'll hear how many of dealers said, I've saved deals because of this. And we're talking significant numbers.
Yeah, so this is amazing to me. First of all, to just touch on, I mean, it always amazes me how like new ideas or industry or things are brought to an industry, right? And the customer service level, actually the need for that customer retention that he needed to take people off the floor is astounding. It's awesome to me. I mean, seriously, that's kind of what being an entrepreneur is all about, or a business owner, just making sure you keep the customer. But I think that you hit on something. So one of my biggest dilemmas as a founder is I feel like I can sell so much easier. 95% of the people I talk to, I feel like turn into a sale. And my people are always like, yeah, but I'm not you. But I do know that, it is good to be the owner, but there has to be something else. So basically you guys pick up on what they're doing different. Like, do you guys listen to how like our top people would take a phone call versus the bottom, or is it more linear than that? Does it take, explain that. Sorry, I'm kind of off.
No, great question. So it starts with, something you said there, which I really like, necessity is the mother of all innovation. Chip knew that he had a problem with his salespeople and how calls were being handled, and found that what he'd seen through what Dave was proposing while he was listening to that was a means of developing a solution that would resolve or help him solve a problem that he had, which is number one, was the call handling process was poor. And, back then in 2008, you had a deal desk in the dealer shop and the guys listening to the calls and saying, did Joe answer that call properly? Did he pick up the call fast enough? Did he talk to that guy the right way? Did he answer the problems that the guy had? And what the dealer or the manager would end up by doing is he'd listen to the call recording to figure out if that happens. Now, if you take on an average, a dealership has, depends how many salespeople they have, but let's say they get about 100 calls a day. So out of those 100 calls, how much time would you be able to spend to listen to all of those calls? And they're probably about 3.5 minutes to 4 minutes long on average. So that's a lot. It's 400 minutes worth of calls to listen to if you try to listen to every single one of them. And that's without taking notes and doing all of that. So the first thing that we were trying to resolve is what missed opportunities are on there. So we were trying to figure out what were they doing wrong. And this is every salesperson, every sales call. So a call comes in and our system can detect what it is. Is it a sales call? Is it a service call? Is it a finance call? Is it a pizza delivery guy? We know how to pick that all up so that we've got the details, and then we break it out and bifurcate it. And then we say, okay, here were all your sales call. By the way, here's what was said on your sales call. And by the way, here's the summary of the sales call. So we summarize it. So we take that 3.5 minutes and summarize it down to a paragraph. And from that paragraph, then we say, here are all the key elements of that call that are really important. The guy called in for a trade-in. He's got a Honda Civic calling a Ford dealership, and he wants to trade in his Honda and he wants to buy another vehicle. So he wants to buy a Ford Escort. So now he's going to buy the Ford Escort. And the guy goes, I'll give you an example, some errors that happen on the calls. Hey, Joe, thank you for taking my call. I'm looking to trade in my Honda Civic. I'd like to buy a Ford Escort. And I think I saw something, you have an advertisement for a Ford black one that you have in stock. I'm really interested. Oh yeah, we don't have that in stock anymore. I'm sorry. Okay, thank you. Bye. What happened? There's a whole, hey, tell me why you want the black versus the blue. Maybe I've got a green, So here are all the things that we actually pick up. And through the years, we led this, and we used to do it with humans. So humans used to listen to this, and they would create the data and the information. And then they say, that's a missed opportunity. Alert Joe to let him know that his guy missed out on something. Call that person back because they're about to leave and go buy a car somewhere else. Or a number of things that might have happened on the call. So we listen to 32 data points and phrases and come up with, hey, here's what's going on the call, and these are the things that you want to be careful with. And then we submit alerts to you. So we're alerting you that what's happening. We're alerting you that an opportunity was missed. And now that's expanded quite significantly. You can build your own alerts in CallRevu as well through keyword search alerts. So imagine the power now of obtaining these alerts in a timely manner that you can respond to. Because, probably you and me are both the same. If that phone conversation goes sideways, I hang up and I'm off to somewhere else. I'm not calling you back. I'm not giving you my business anymore. So there's, you got to be on it and you got to be right. So our solution's helping on picking up those errors, finding those opportunities, uncovering where you can actually enhance the individuals. And then in that exercise, we're now scoring the salesperson. So now they've got a scorecard, and they're just like athletes. No one wants to be at the bottom of any list. Everybody wants to be the top. So now we're helping to coach you. How do you improve? So you've got things of, you didn't ask the guy for his phone number. You didn't ask the guy for his email address. You didn't ask if you wanted to come in with a confirmed date and time of coming in. You missed on all of these things that we've picked up. You're not doing well. And this is how your team is doing. But by the way, click on this video and we can help you train you. Specific and training videos are no more than 3 minutes, usually more like 2 minutes each. So there's snippets of, hey, how to do better. And then you've got longer trainings. Then we can do on-site trainings. So we're helping them through the whole process. So capture what's going on those calls. And it's like a haystack. So imagine a haystack with the needle in the haystack. I'm trying to find that one needle. We go out and pick out where that magnet that finds a needle and pulls it out right away in a timely manner so that it goes back up and we respond back to that client and he's not out calling someone else and it's not a lost opportunity for me. Does that make it clear for Joe?
So it makes it very clear. And actually some things that I want to expand on with that. So first of all people have different styles of selling and all managers have different styles of typically, if you're a manager at a dealership, you probably got promoted from within, because that's the mistake most people make, is they think if you're a good salesperson, you'll be a good sales manager. And that usually doesn't work out well anyways. But that being said, the worst thing about being a manager is trying to make it seem like you're not picking on a person or the person feeling picked on. But what's nice, what you guys have put together is, hey, you're a third party. So it's kind of like, hey, it's nothing personal. We just picked this out. Okay. So the manager doesn't have to make someone feel like they're picking on them, number one. And then secondly, I'm assuming because you're doing this for so many customers, you have so many different things you're picking up on. I mean, you might pick up on something different in a phone call than I would pick up on personally, right? So your system, I'm sure now, is picking up on things in general. So how did that get developed?
Awesome question. And by the way, and people buy different, not only do we have different sales managers and salespeople, also buyers are very different from the East Coast versus West Coast, from the South to the North to the Midwest to whatever. So they all buy different. So you got to be able to have a system that can actually understand the nuances of that buying process. So first of all, we help train them on what are the right skills. So there's best practices. And then there's, specifics to a specific region. And so we've trained our tool and our platform to be able to understand those nuances. If you're in New Jersey or you're in Brooklyn, some things are said in certain ways that are acceptable. And if you're in California and Southern Cal versus Northern Cal, it's a little different versus, again, the Midwest or anywhere, or in Florida. So we've trained our AI tool to be able to pick up on the dialects, the terminologies that might be different. The some of the words that people use will not exist in certain areas. And one thing that I find really fascinating is we're able to tell, well, that's badass good, or that's a badass idea. Is that bad, ass, or is it badass? And we figure that out. We know how that's all done. And that's the secret sauce of CallRevu. CallRevu, with the ability to have been doing this for so many years with humans. So we were picking it up and we knew that the guy said, that's badass, it's not bad, ? Ass, or no, not interested, whatever. We pick up on all that nuances and we built those. And to build smart AI, you need massive data. And that's where we came from. We had that massive data and we brought it in, and we're able to bifurcate it in by the regions with the dialects, the different terminologies. We have a lot of, Southern Cal or Southern USA, we have a lot of people that have what we call Spanglish English in their conversation. And so imagine conversation starts in Spanish, then goes into English and goes back into Spanish. And then you got words that are mixed up. Not a problem for CallRevu. We handle that. We take care of all that. And that's because we have that rich data, and we have some of the smartest people that built this intelligent data capability.
So so much to undress here, right?
Yes.
So I want to. So there's a couple things I'm thinking. So first of all, if you had all that data, you must have been recording all those calls that the human was listening into, anyways, right?
Correct.
So was that just dumb luck that you had it for when AI was available, or were people right? Because sometimes it's like, as they say, it's better to be lucky than good. Was that a better to be lucky moment, or
You're, and I'm not going to lie, it was better to be lucky. No one knew that we were capturing all that information and storing it and keeping it and maintaining it in the way we were. And that could be used then in the future to build out on the AI kind of logic that was built out. Now, we knew that there were ways of doing things with the models that we had. There was algorithms back when we were thinking of it versus 3 years ago when AI really started to come into play. So we used to use algorithms to help, and those were mathematical equations of saying if you do this and this and this and it said this and that, drive out this outcome. So we were already building algorithms at the time, but we weren't thinking of machine learning or what you're seeing right now with ChatGPT type of thing. The advancement has been tremendous, but we have that gold, we have that oil, that data is now the pure gold that people talk about. That's what makes the difference. Now, we were smart enough to say, use it in the way that, can enhance the productivity for our customers. And it was always intended to be, how do we do things faster, easier? So the algorithms were the secret sauce in the beginning, which has now become machine learning, which is now natural deep processing languages, and now LM as well. So you're seeing the advancement in all of this.
well, and so the advancements for you guys must be exponential, because even in the old way, you were still having a person listen to the conversation, but now you're taking probably all those recordings. I mean, at one point, how many different people were on calls listening to phone calls a day?
Oh, we had lots. Yeah, to quantify, I can't remember, but you're talking probably hundreds. You had,
Okay. So let's say there was 250 people in a day listening to a phone call, all individually. Now you've basically compiled all the information to be the equivalent of 250 brains on each phone call. Right?
Technology is changing so fast. You're absolutely right. So the ability but you have to have a basis to start off with. Now, so what's important, I think, where you're leading towards is there's a couple of things that are really important. First of all, we're focused. We're automotive only. So we don't do anything else.
I was just going to ask you that.
There
That's
you
my
go.
next question.
Because too often you got generalists and you're going to say, yeah, it's good, but they didn't understand what a trunk really meant, or the carb, or a turbocharge, or boot, or a transy, or there's terminology that's so specific to our industry at times, and things that are said that if you're not focused, you can't be really good. So that was an important thing. So I decided as a CEO, we need to be focused. We need to be the best of the best. So, we have well over 5,000 customers. We have well over 9 OEMs that use our technology, but it's because they see that we're focused and we're able to get that information for them more rapid, much more accurate, and we understand them. So that's an important aspect of it, Joe. You're spot on.
So you just totally deflated my balloon of excitement when you said you were focused on cars, because I'm thinking, okay, I have to start recording every conversation I have about automatic lawnmowers and start plugging the data, compared to my other people. So I guess maybe you can hook me up with the right people. But but I know a lot of car dealer owners that maybe would be very interested in what you guys are doing. So you said it was 2008. What year? Right, 2008. When
2008 is when 2007, 2008 is when CallRevu got kicked off. Correct.
Okay. So from the time that it was human beings taking calls, what year did you guys start to implement like the AI automation part of it?
Machine learning started back in 2015 for CallRevu.
Okay.
So 2015, but it was really done, in a kind of a quiet. We're not, first of all, we're not braggers. We're not the kind of guys that, hey, look at us, we're doing the new technology stuff. No, we were always behind the scenes trying to do things. And the first thing we wanted to be able to do which was really important for us, was being able to define every call. Okay. And I want to stress that, Joe, because people think, every call is truly every call, but it's not. We found that in our industry, when you look at the peers and my competitors, most of them use IVR, so interactive voice responses. So press 1 for sales, press 2 for service. So the calls started to get bifurcated by the fact that you pressed 1, you pressed 2, you pressed 3. So if you press 3, and that happened to go to, I don't know, a service department, let's say, but you really were calling for a trade-in or sales. Well, that call will never get recorded. That call will never get listened to because they pressed 3. A lot of companies used that as a lever to determine where I needed to go, but also to limit the costs on the software side, because if I'm taking all the recordings, I'm taking all the listenings, I'm listening to all that, that's an expensive endeavor to do. So CallRevu, what we were doing in 2015 is we were trying to understand, what is the purpose of this call? Define the department you're calling for even before you do anything else. Because I don't care if you hit 1 or 2, because I used to tell my team, I'm that guy that, whenever I hit an IVR, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Get me to a human, because I can't waste, press 1 here, then press 2 for this. It just drives me freaking crazy. I said, that's not customer experience, that's customer frustration. So I said, okay, if I can pick up all the calls that are coming through the dealership, every of them, I don't care where what IVR number they're pressing on. And, IVRs are good. They have a purpose for them. But I want to make sure that I'm picking up on all the calls, because I want to make sure that I know that the person who hit 3 that never intended to go to service really wanted to talk to a sales guy. I've got him as well. So that was number 1. And so we built out a whole entire capability to say, when you called in and you said, yeah, I've got a car that I'm looking to trade in. Oh, trade in, I got that. And I'd like to buy a new car. Oh, you're also thinking buying. So, okay, now I've got your buying, you're trading in, and I'm looking to do this within the next couple of weeks. Oh, now I got a time lapse. Make sure it goes to the sales guy. And if nothing happens, because what's going to happen when you call this parts department? Yep, hi, this is Joe Parts. Can I help you? Yeah, I'm looking to do a trade in. Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? You're going to have to call back. Thank you. And you say, that's a sales opportunity lost. I'm picking those up. That's why I am so good at what we do. So we pick up that information, and we did it in the beginning by understanding what departments. And I've got, I think it's 36 different departments you can call into, and my machine learning or my AI engine can break it out and determine where you're calling in. So that was the beginning, and that's what we started in 2015. And it took a while to really perfect it, but we're the only ones in the industry that does that.
So this might sound like a dumb question, or it might give you a chuckle, but I can't seem to figure out a great phone system to get multiple lines at Langton Group. I mean, that's a whole side story, because I've got bad internet and all those phones. But I cannot imagine how many phone calls that you guys have coming in that you're monitoring, like approximately in a day or a week. How many phone calls do you guys interact with?
Oh God! So we probably, I'm just trying to do the math off the top of my head. 100,000.
Yeah, that's a lot of phone calls.
It's a massive amount of calls that are coming through. So we have a lot that is happening, and they're going through, and that's why you can't scale humans to begin with. So you got to have the machines and the ability to do it right. So there's a couple of things I want to really outline. One, when you're listening to these calls, you got to make sure that you're listening properly. Now there's security requirements. So our system is able to detect, if you buy, there's no reason why you would want to do on the calls that we're on that you would give any PII information away, like my social security number or my credit card number or some identifying numbers that are not important. If you did on ours, we scrub that out immediately so that you will never be able to hear it. It gets redacted right out of the system. So we're PIIing at the beginning of the call. So when you're calling and you're on the recording, it's already gone. It's nowhere there to be found. So security is a really, really, really important thing. Then how do you encrypt the information? We are so tight on that. And that's an area I spent a lot of money, probably because of my software background. I've been in the software business now for 30 years for some of the most prestigious software companies out there. But when you think about, what cybersecurity is happening out there, you better make sure that you got a partner that's completely backing you with that. We are NIST compliant, and I can't remember what the term means. It's NIST, but it's what the Department of Defense mandates its vendors to be. So if you want to be a member of the United States Department of Defense partner, you have to be NIST compliant. It's a freaking process. It's expensive. It's hard, but we did it because we thought, look, if we're going to be able to do it, I want to do the best. Make sure you get the top of the list, and we're going to use the best of the best to do this. So NIST compliant is what we wanted to be, and that's what we are. So we provide that. So security is important. The information that you're putting in there. Then what do you do with that information? So we make sure that we're using it to increase the value for our customers. We are so focused on creating value. And I don't just throw out that word as a word in itself, but it's truly, how do I help you get your return on your investment? If you can't get money back from my system, we'll give you your money back. We don't want you to be using technology that is of no value to you. We want it to be very value return, and that's focus. So again, and when you look at our customers, they've been with us. We've got customers that have been with us since 2008.
So you started in 2008. You started in the machine learning in 2015. So what were some major milestones for you guys? Because you had, at some point you're doing machine learning, but I'm sure you're kind of running some things in parallel with your people.
Yes.
Kind of walk us through that process.
So let's start. So it was all human in the beginning. Then it started getting with algorithms and mathematical equations that we're working to enable you to do this from a algorithm method. And then we got into starting to get into the machine learning. But the humans stayed in part of this process because we were adding in the humans that were helping to make sure that what the machines were doing were correct. Because in the early days, the machine only knew what was right and wrong, but you had to tell it which one it was. So which one's green, which one's red, which one's green, which one's red, which one's yes, which one's no. And so we would always augment the messaging because the machines were never perfect. No one's ever, not even humans, by the way. Humans are less perfect than the machines if you stay focused. And so, but the machines were not perfect at all in the beginning. So we were measuring all of that, and we're bringing in humans to do more quality control. Okay, re-listen, correct. Oh, that was where an error is. Go back into the machine learning, make those adjustments. And so it got to the point where we started to increase the quality of what the machines were able to get and decrease the efforts of what the humans were needing to the point where we don't need the humans anymore into listening to the calls. And that's where we are today. So there's many aspects of there's none of that. It's all machine capabilities. And you use humans on the back end to do quality assurance and build new models.
So I don't want to put you on the spot with this question, but it's a question I get constantly with the stuff we're automating. And, I'm not doing it with software, I'm doing it more with hardware, but how did you keep how'd you keep a good culture? I mean, the people that worked with you guys at CallRevu had to see the writing on the wall, So how'd you make sure that they were being good scrubbers,
So a lot of the people that were listening to the calls were saying, this is a dead end job. They were aware of it because they could see it themselves. And it got to the point where those people become QA person. And those people were so good at what they were doing that we hired them into becoming part of the professional services team that we have that actually help our accounts to be better in using our software, better in understanding how the data works for them, better to do all that. But I want to touch on that because culture is such an important aspect. For me, this might be controversial for some people, but the middle of my nucleus is my employees. So a lot of people say, well, the customer's the nucleus. Yeah, that's like telling people follow the money. And I tell them never follow the money, especially my sales guys, but follow the value. If you're driving value, the money will follow. If your employees are happy and the culture of the company is right, your customers will succeed with it. If you got a rotten culture and you got people that are not happy, your customers will fail. So our customers at the nucleus of the point. And I say this because I want to touch on something I think that's really important. When COVID hit, it was just a massive surprise for everybody. No one really knew how to react. In my industry, the big players, the CDKs of the world and the Cox Automotives all came out and threw at our dealers 50% off your invoices. And, I wasn't ready for that. And I don't have 50% to give off. And I don't have a coffer like a publicly traded company. It says, oh my God, what do I do? So we went into a survival mode. And I tell you all of this because we had to lay off almost 50% of my company. And then almost everybody in our company took a cost reduction. I took 50% off of my salary so that I wanted to make sure that, we were going to keep our company afloat because I had no idea what was going to happen. If I'm only getting 50 cents on the dollar for my invoices and it's costing me almost as much to run the business, what do we do, guys? So we were being very, responsible and fiscally responsible. And anyways, all that happens. But the one thing I did say when we laid everybody off, I says, we're going to have a program in place that's going to be bring everybody back. That was our chant. Bring them all back. Bring them all back was so important to me. That year, by December 15th, I had restructured the company and everything else. That payroll, the December 15 payroll, everybody who had taken a cost reduction got paid back every single dollar they gave me. And that was so important for us because I said, there's no reason that CallRevu should be, riding off of the backs of the employees. You're getting all your money back, guys. That you took 10%, 25%, 30% off of your salaries. I'm giving that all back to you. It was on December 15th. I wanted to make sure that they got that for Christmas. That was number one. Number two, as the business started to pick up and we started to re-see how the value of what we were bringing, CallRevu was in high demand now. People needed the call analytics and the call monitoring piece of it more than ever because no one was going in. They were all doing it by the phone.
Every phone call has to count.
There you go.
They all have to count.
Spot on, Joe. And they were starting to learn that I didn't even have to go to a dealership to buy a car. They'll come to my driveway. Shit, I'm going to call the guy down, next county to come over. So you're right. Every single call had to count. And at that point, I brought back, it was probably by the middle of May, I brought back everybody that wanted to come back. And that was more than 95% of all the employees that ever left me that I had to let go because of COVID. I brought them all back. They were all back in their chairs and we grew the business. So for me, the culture is really important. Now, going to your question about what about those people that saw the writing on the walls, we found ways to they were talented people. We brought them back in. We got them to use them and repurpose them into a place that they felt that they created more value for them. So top dollars to a lot of those guys. Some of them ended up by going into the development team, believe it or not. I have people that were doing that are now working in QAing our software. So we have a QA department and they have that experience that came from there, which only helps. So our motto is, help the people. We have core is about growing our own people. Core is about partnering with our own people. Core is about the integrity of our people. Core is about the people. That it's all about our people. Any success I've got is not because of Anthony Giagnacovo, I'll tell you that. It's because of great people of CallRevu. That team is nothing but stellar. I am so fortunate to be on their shoulders. They make me see so far up higher that it made us to grow to the pace where we are.
So Anthony, that's what I say all the time about our people. And one of the things that I am really glad I asked you the question, and I didn't know, by the way, to the listeners, I didn't know how you were going to answer that question, Anthony. But the cool thing about that answer is I find every time I interview somebody about automation, it's always the same answer. It's a reuse of the people you already had because, you talk about culture and the value, don't follow the money, follow the value or create the value. I deal with the same thing when I talk to professionals about automating lawn mowing. And they're like, well, what am I going to do with my people? And I'm like, put them in other profit centers.
Yes.
Like put them someplace else. Don't put them in that mundane, is it a red box or a yellow or a green box, a red box or green box? And most people are probably, they got paid to educate themselves in the industry that you serve at CallRevu. And now they're still in the industry using the knowledge they accumulated to serve it better. That's like the most amazing story that there is, but that happens in automation companies all over the world, but it never gets talked about.
Well,
right?
It too often, and people say, oh my God, you're using AI and it's cost cutting exercises. For me, it's not about cutting costs. It's increasing value. How do I increase the value for you? What does it mean by bringing in this technology? And how do these people that work, you said it so well. I've invested in training these people, educating them. They've invested their time to learn about the industry. And our industry, like any other industry, is very specific. And when you have that talent, why wouldn't you, use them in a way that can increase the value as well as increase their values? So I don't know. My philosophy has been always build from the people you have. I worked for Dave Duffield when I was at PeopleSoft, and I remember him telling me in my early years, don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness. And it's a powerful word that sentence there that he just put out at me when I was really young. And it's all about, if I've hired you and you're a good person, you're working the company, and your motives are all about, helping to grow the business and growing yourself for the values with pure integrity, then that ties back in by saying, just do what you need to do. Don't wait for something, make it happen. And if you fail fast and course correct. But if you don't try, you'll never make the difference. So I had a program in a previous company I had, which was called the 30-30 rule, which is all about cost savings in our organization. So this is in the early 2000, and I think it was 2012. So we were looking at how do we find ways to increase efficiencies and help save costs. And so I gave everybody a mandate. We call it the 30-30 program. And you can cut a third of your cost anywhere you're looking at. And I'll never forget, my assistant said to me, you asked me to do this too, Anthony? I don't have anything. I'm not a sales guy. I'm not the developer. I'm not those guys. I says, I bet you'll come up with an idea and it'll be great. Just whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. And she came back and she said, hey, did you notice that at the time we used a lot of printers? Did you notice that people are printing off and they're printing off on a page on a single side? And a lot of this stuff is just internal information for themselves. And I says, yeah. She goes, well, I figured out that you can program it so that it prints double-sided. So that's really interesting. And if they want to print single-sided, they'd have to put in a code to do so. And, they'd be told that they did that. And she implemented that program. The cost saving was unbelievable. I mean, the amount of printer tone we saved, the amount of money on the print, on just the paper and everything to go with it, it was impressive. And it just goes to show you, if you empower people, they will find better solutions that, you would have never thought about. So that's just an example of, how to empower people.
That's a great example. And like I said, it's one of the things that makes me passionate about doing the show is to show the world one day that, it's like I open up a post. It never fails on Facebook. And that's half my problem. I'm looking at Facebook posts, but, talking about, there's a self-checkout at Walmart and I should get paid to walk into Walmart and check my stuff out. But it's like, okay, hold on a second. They're trying to move you through the store faster. You don't want to wait in line. When you really look at a lot of these self-checkouts, it happened right after COVID when people still want to shop. But the point is, you said it earlier, automation increases value. It's a value add, but so often it gets pegged as an enemy. It kills jobs. It's not good for jobs, but it kind of breaks the ceiling open. And in my industry, it's the grass ceiling. Like, people only get paid a certain amount of money to cut grass. In your industry, it would be, you can only pay somebody a certain amount of money to just listen to phone calls every day, So usually I think it gets rid of those, but then gives a better career option, right? So I don't want to spend too much time on that, because there's a lot more to digest with what you guys are doing. So I'm going to move on from it. But you said somebody else had the idea. So one of the things I want to just clear up. So the person called, did it. How did you end up, Anthony, being like at the helm of this? So you said you work for other software companies. Kind of explain how you end up here.
So it's funny because, there's a term, entrepreneur. Chip is a true entrepreneur. Chip built this company. Chip created it. And it is. Then I've heard this term a lot. It's not, I didn't invent it, entrepreneurial. So I'm more of an entrepreneurial kind of guy. So I'm a professional CEO. So I've worked in software my entire life. So got my MBA and went to McGill University in Montreal, and worked in software companies like PeopleSoft, and then went off to Adobe, and had my own startups that I worked in and so forth. So I got tapped on the shoulder by some of the investors at CallRevu, including Chip, and they asked, "Hey, would you come in and help take us to the next level?" At the time when I took over CallRevu, we were about 1,000 customers, maybe 1,200 more or less. It depends how you calculate the customers. And, and that was in November of 2018. Fast forward to, January of 2023, 5 years later, almost, we're now about 5,200, 5,300 customers. Plus we have 8 OEMs, which we didn't have before, which is a massive market. So General Motors uses our technology, Subaru uses our technology, Honda uses our technology. So you've got a whole bunch of these OEMs that are well recognized as such. So I got requested to come in and help grow the business and take it to the next level. And I was honored. And so when I looked at it, I remember, being asked about it, I said, oh my God, this is an industry that's going to explode. And initially, and I did not have the foresight to think of COVID, by the way. I did not know there was a pandemic coming, but I did believe, because when you take a look at your cell phone, and if you do a search on your cell phone of a dealership, and it gives you a number of dealerships, or they'll say near you dealerships, the first button on Google, there's a button that shows up. It's a call button. Okay. And then if I don't know if you're like me, but when I'm in my car, I'm doing everything hands-free, and it's usually calling someone. Hey, Siri, call this person. Hey, Siri, call that person. Hey, and I'm thinking there's all of these voice commands or this call button, capability. This is going to revolutionize the way people are actually interacting with other people, because texting takes time. I have to stop the car, or I have to stop walking, or I have to do that, but I can walk and talk. I can do a whole bunch of other things, and people are always on the move. My wife, she recently scheduled a service appointment for her vehicle using Google Home. And how did you even figure that out? And I was so impressed. And so all of these voice commands are starting to happen. And I thought about that. And I says, this is going to be the evolution and the revolution where we're going. And so you're going to need a system that can actually now pick up on those conversations and understand what's going on. And so there was the genesis of my desire to join CallRevu and be part of CallRevu and invest in CallRevu.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and I just wanted to make sure that people kind of understood that, and I say, because you call it something different. It's like there's always, to me, I see like startup CEOs or entrepreneurs, but then there has to be a time where someone actually looks at a spreadsheet and says, okay, let me chisel the clay, versus like someone like myself. I know I'm the guy that just keeps mounting up stacks of clay, but then somebody comes in and chisels it. So I guess you're a chiseler, Anthony, it sounds like.
Well, thank you.
And by the way, congratulations on that growth,
thank you.
1,000 to 5,000,
Yeah, it's impressive. But, I must say it's easy to chisel something that's good. And CallRevu was fantastic. Now, while CallRevu, and you got to take it back from where Chip was coming from, he was so customer focused. It's part of our DNA. It was over the top customer focused. Chip always used to say, "You have the right to fire me." That's what he used to tell his customers. You have the right to fire me if I don't deliver on my promises. And he was honest to his word. And that's inherent in the company today. So what I was able to, I like the analogy of what I was able to chisel or use as clay to complete it was something that was already really good.
Yeah. No, that sounds great. So if you're going to stay focused in the industry, right? What do you think your current, you said 8 major OEMs, but like percentage wise, how much of the industry do you think you guys are already working for? And then what's your strategy to saturate further?
We have a large percentage. So we have a very large percentage of the market share. But think about it. CallRevu started with sales. So we were focused in the sales environment. And that's where our bread and butter was coming from. And that's where, our strength is. And that was the legacy. We were all about the sales department. Now we ventured off into a couple of years ago, we started doing the marketing side. So we're analyzing the marketing spend. So I'm actually verifying what's going on your marketing spend, looking where people are coming from, tying it back to a call, taking what was traditionally the tracking component and actually analyzing it and incorporating it with Google Analytics and bringing back some insights. So now I can tell you your marketing spend and effectiveness while measuring the efficiency. So you might be spending that $20,000 a month that Chip used to be spending, but now I can tell you where you're spending it. traders.com, cars.com, pure car, wherever you're putting all that money, I can show you where it's coming from, how much it's coming back to you, and where you're getting your biggest spend so you can actually analyze it. So there's a marketing side to all of that. Back in October of 2022, we launched the service side. We were never in the service. That's a big part of the organization. So now we have a service offering. So now we're doing marketing, all the analysis to drive the business. Now we've always been in the sales side. So we've got a full sales. So we got a product called, so you have a CallVision DNI, which is your marketing lead generation management tool. Then you've got your Sales Vision, which is all about sales, understanding, managing your sales team, your sales organization. And now we have Service Vision. It's all about the service side of the business, the other part of it. So we're expanding across that domain, still being purely focused in automotive and really being successful at it. But it's a huge market there, Joe. There's, the sky's the limit right now.
Oh, and it sounds like you're doing it right too, because what you're doing is you're taking the relationships you already have, and then you're actually helping. So they already believe in CallRevu, so now you're just offering new platforms for them to utilize you in their other profit centers.
Well, you're spot on, because exactly, and for them, it's a no-brainer. Oh, you understand my business. Now, if I came in and I started doing pet shops, or I started doing medical centers, or I started doing laundry centers, whatever it might be. My developers don't understand the industry and how it works. No one knows what the workflow is. It would take me time to get into that business and start it. So why not be the best in the business that you're in? And that's where focus becomes so important to me. If it's something I learned from Dave, Dave used to tell me always, stay focused. Let's get focused. Let's get the best. Distractions there's tons of them. The toughest thing on my job is not what we're doing. It's what we're not doing. Because I get bombarded every day. Hey, what do you think of this? Or what do you think of that? It's, we start the morning by, what are we not going to do? And that's the toughest part of it.
Anthony, I should probably play this podcast to myself 4 times in the car, but just that's that block right there, because that's actually my problem right now is, there's a million things that I'm doing that I probably shouldn't do, and not spending enough time on the things that I should do. And it's easy to get distracted in an industry that's like budding with opportunity. Any type of automation right now, there's so much going on, and if you're in a space like this and you start, I don't know about you, but I go places, I'm like, holy cow, I could automate that. You could automate that. And so it's hard to get distracted, or hard not to get distracted, so good for you that you're keeping your people on the rails, And so yeah. So we've the time is flying, by the way. So we've already been talking for about 45 minutes here. And I want to talk a little bit about yourself and your background and your families. But before I do that, I just want to make sure so I don't leave out, am I missing anything? Any major, like kind of where you guys are going? I mean, I think you basically explained it, but I want to make sure I don't leave anything out that that I should be asking you about CallRevu.
So CallRevu's direction is to be the pipe that captures all of the communication that happens. We're all about communication intelligence. And that communication is predominantly today phone calls, and that what happens on the phone conversation. But it doesn't stop there. There's texting, there's chatbots, there's emails, and it goes on and on. So the channels that you want to communicate with want to communicate with by using our tools is where we're making sure we're addressing. We want to be able to be that omni-channel of the communication intelligence, but we're going to be the best at it. We're not just going to do it as a side piece. It's be the best and be the top. And that's what it's all about. So I wanted to add that piece, but you're absolutely spot on. I think we've covered a lot of information here, and I'm very grateful for this time, Joe. Go ahead and ask me more about me.
Well, yeah. And I mean, I'm sure what happens is I ask you about you, and then we'll end up coming back into the business anyways. But so, just some background on yourself then, as far as, you as a young boy, what you did, about your family, and then your upbringing, go ahead about that.
And I think I like what you asked about the upbringing, because it has a tremendous amount of influence on who I am. Both my parents are immigrants right off the boat. They, My mother was 14 years old and immigrated over to Italy in the early 50s with my grandfather and her family. My father came over as a tailor, and he was 10 years older than my mother, and they met in Canada, and they got married and all that. But yet, here are people that, very little education, if any, built a life for us. And my father was very much about, you got to be able to fend for yourself. Educate yourself is really, really important. And so spent a lot of time on making sure we got that. My brothers and I we were the first to go to universities out of my family. I decided to go down the route of business, was an accountant, graduated as an accountant, hated it. I just hated it. And then got into software, worked at IBM, left to go to IBM and went to PeopleSoft and grew out of that. And the other thing that my parents taught me a lot was, be curious. Curiosity is so important. And I drive people for how curious I am. I always want to know how things work and why they do things the way they do. And, I fast forward and got into the software world and ended up by living in California for some time, and then met my wife and we got married. And Dave Duffield in 1996 asked me to go herd the cats in Europe and start PeopleSoft in Europe. So went there, and it was supposed to be a 2-year stint and lasted 15 years in Europe, which we loved, and lived in Paris. I'm fortunate enough, I speak 3 languages, learning a 4th. So I speak French, English, and Italian. I hold an Italian citizenship as well. And I have a house in Italy that I go to every so often when we get a chance to go, more often when I was living in Europe than now. But and then I've got a daughter. And I think, for me, I have a daughter, and I try to emphasize the importance of, education, determination, and breaking down the barriers. One thing I didn't tell you about CallRevu is that I believe, CallRevu was built off of the back of women in many ways. The number one employee who I adore, her name is Sandra Lee, who's no longer with the company, but Sandra, I know very well, was the first employee. And she used to work in her basement, and she hired a second person, Bobby Roberts, who's still with the company. And the two of them used to work in the basements. And then when it was too cold, they moved up to her kitchen. And CallRevu, the first 10 employees, I'd have to say probably 80% of them were women. And most of them are still with CallRevu as such. And I keep telling my daughter, I says, never, I use CallRevu's women as examples of leaders and people that build things, and never let your gender be a limitation. And that's really, that is monumental for me. That is one of the most important things. So I'm ensure that that's constantly being reminded. And it's Women's History Month, and we're looking at every day we talk about how great the women, and CallRevu is made up of a little more, maybe 50%. Maybe 49 or 50% of all employees are women at CallRevu, which is great in an industry that's male dominant. So those are the things that are dear and close to my heart.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So first, I'm going to talk about so I have a daughter myself. I don't know how old your daughter is. Mine's 22. But the cool thing is, like, I would be driving around with her when she was playing volleyball, and I would do stuff like, I'd say, Julie, should I turn left or should I turn right? And she'd be like, or should I go straight or turn left? And because you could get to this place the same way. And one of the days, this is a good story real quick. She was like, go straight. And I started to go straight. She's like, I'm surprised you didn't go left. And I went left, and she was like, what are you doing? And I was like, listen, let me tell you something as your dad. And I manage a lot of people. One of the main things that I see difference between men and women, most men will just make a decision. If you ask them, they just say it. I was like, and the one thing when it comes to women in leadership, don't wait for somebody to make your decision. If you get asked to make a decision, make the decision. I think I shouldn't say it's the only thing. It's one of the main drivers to me in gender inequality but what I think as a male leader is just to allow people to make those decisions, and inspire it. So that's always been something I've wanted to do with my daughter, is basically say to her, like, let's recognize some of our differences, because I think that's something that doesn't get talked about. I don't want to be controversial, but I think that's something that I've always tried to do. So I believe in it firmly also, Anthony.
Joe, that's great. You know what? Kudos to you, man. And empowering your daughter to be the one that made the decision and showing her that she has the power and the right to do that. Spot on, my friend. I love it.
Yeah. Well, because I mean, wouldn't you have to agree? I mean, a lot of times
Oh,
it's like,
Toronto.
you know, I mean, even in a lot of times, like some of the sports that we've played. I mean, for me, I wrestled and played football. So these are very like masculine, like, you know, make decisions. This is the play. You run the play how we said, da, da, da. But even when my daughter was in sports and I look at how different those sports are, they're run differently, you know. But when you get into the
Yes.
business world, since business is dominated by men,
Too often.
it's there's so many parallels to literally just how boys are brought up a lot of times differently than girls. And I've always said, okay, if we want to get it where it's all just equal, we have to start to look at the way we do that different in upbringing, because that's the only way you're going to change it. You know,
Yes.
so anyways, something I'm passionate about. So what part of Italy do you own the house in? So why I bring this up is I said I'm half Italian. My family came also, my grandparents came from Altavilla, Emilia. So it's actually Sicilian. It's really south in Italy. Like sometimes I don't know if I'm Sicilian or Southern Italian, because but it's Altavilla, Emilia. That's where we're from. And my friend Gabe was just able to get his Italian citizenship back, and he's trying to get me to do it so we can get a house out there. So you know, so where do you live in Italy? Or
So
what is it
I
called?
got my citizenship because when I was born, my parents, you know, I mean, I was Canadian. I was born in Canada and Montreal, but I got my citizenship in 1993 because my parents were still Italian when I was born by coincidence. So our place is in a place called Molise. So it's funny enough because my wife, also her parents are both immigrants, and we come from the same region. So my wife's from Toronto and I'm from Montreal. So if anybody knows the distance, it's about 600 kilometers. What's that? That's 390 miles,
Yeah, all right.
390 miles difference from one another. So I met my wife by coincidence, and her village and my mom's village are like 20 minutes away from one another in Italy, in a place called Molise, which is a region on the so if you're in Rome and go right across to the Adriatic side, you'd hit Molise, which is one of the provinces. And we have a little. So we bought the house that my father-in-law my father-in-law's great grandfather and his brother built this house on a farmland, which is right outside of the village. And my father-in-law had his house and he kept it. And I bought the house next to it. So now we have the adjacent house and we've been restoring it ever since. So it's a beautiful little town called Castropignano. So if you want to look it up, it's Castropignano, if you want to literally translate it. Little town perched up 650 meters above the sea. Beautiful, beautiful. It's one of those places where I go to, you know, be fully relaxed.
Yeah, you should send me an email after the show and just show me a couple pictures. I'm fascinated by it. I've actually never been to Italy. I want to go terribly. So it's kind of fueling me. So we won't stay on that, but yeah, I think it's beautiful. So so you said you met your wife. What does your wife do then?
So my wife's so she worked for many years for a law firm. Now she's retired and raising my daughter, who's 17 years old. And you know, we've made a perfect decision of, you know, if we're gonna have a family, we're good enough to be able to not have her work. And I mean, she works really hard.
yeah.
The one thing I do want to say is that, you know, if I have any success in life, it's because of my wife. And it's true, that old saying, you know, behind any successful man is a woman. That is so true in my life. She's made me able to do what I need to do. And I'm very grateful for that. And she's raising, you know, my daughter and me, because I still need to be raised.
Well, I always say, man, I mean, myself, I don't know how it is for you, but I feel like, I mean, I look at myself in the mirror and still sometimes feel like I'm the 18-year-old standing there. You know, at the end of the day, we physically mature, but mentally, you know, the things I laugh about. I mean, somebody farts, it's funny. You know, and right? I mean, so you look at it, and it's like people look like, oh my gosh, you have 300 employees and this and this, and you still
grow up, right?
Yeah, it's like I don't want to grow up. I think it's awesome. You know, no stress. It's, you know, so yeah, so that's funny to say that. So so then, what do you think? I mean, what inspired you to be such an entrepreneur? Then, I mean, you know, business leader. I mean, because you said you were an accountant, so was it just an easy like parallel for you to move over to that?
No, so it's funny because I became an accountant because my father said it was 1981, 82. There was a crisis going on. Inflation was crazy. My father says you gotta get an education that you can guarantee get a job. Okay, Anthony, do that. And I got a job, and I said, okay, I don't want. My brother was an engineer, and I'm not interested in that. My other brother was a doctor, and I wasn't nowhere close to becoming a doctor. I was really good with math, and you know what? It's an easy degree to get, I thought, so I'll just do it. And I just hated it. I remember doing my internships and all that, and never really enjoyed it. Was good at it, but I really enjoyed the consulting side of the businesses and all of that. And I did a co-op program at IBM. And they hired me, and I just loved what I was doing there. And I got into the software business, but I got more about how to run the business. And I was very fortunate enough that I got involved more on starting businesses, putting plans together, analyzing what a business would look like, how to build out the business plan, how to build out the execution plan. So one thing led to another. And then Dave Duffield, the best mentor anybody can ever had. I was so blessed to be, worked for such a man. He showed me the ways. I mean, the man was, taking risks when he believed, created businesses and focused on things and made them happen. PeopleSoft became, the second largest ERP system in the world. We were a little small startup company out of, Walnut Creek, California. We were, who knows what we were going to be. And next thing you know, we were, bought by Oracle for $10.9 billion. So, that's what motivated me. That's what got me going. And, and then one thing leads to another. And then I got my MBA later in life, once I got a lot more practice and, having opened up offices. I opened up PeopleSoft's Italy's office. I ran PeopleSoft Europe. Once I got that experience of how to run a business, and I said, I need an MBA to help me out here a little more and get better trained. And I did. And it opened up a whole bunch of other avenues afterwards. And I said, I like what I do. And I really do enjoy running businesses. Being the CEO is the greatest gift that I've got. And I'm really fortunate to work for companies that are as great as CallRevu.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, and I agree. I mean, sometimes I think my biggest problem, because right now for me currently, I'm in that small raise capital, get larger, build $1 billion brand. And I think that's my biggest fear whenever I'm trying to think about raising capital, because I love being the leader, right? So my biggest fear is I raise the capital and then they're like, yep, Joe, hey, great, tack you out, bring in an Anthony, see you later. Because I'm like, oh, this is So yeah, and I guess those are all crossroads we have to make, But.
Yeah, Joe, and I'll give people advice on that. I mean, it all depends what you're doing as a business. It says, there's raising capital and then there's giving up your company. Those are two different things in my book. So if you're trying to raise capital and you're smart and you take a look at the Mark Facebook guy, and Mark, can't remember his last name, believe it or not. He never gave up. Zuckerberg, thank you so much. I was putting an R in there. Mark Zuckerberg. I mean, the guy never gave up his company. He just got people to give money to the company that he needed, and was smart. Dave Duffield did the same. He never gave up his company. He built it because he believed so much on it. He says, "Yeah, you want to be part of an investor? The value's here, and I'll make you more, but I'm not giving it up." And but then there's people that say, "Hey, I'll give it all up for that $1 million you're going to give me right now," and then you'll find yourself in the back of the bus.
Yeah, well, and that's my thing. Is I've already put millions into what I'm doing, so I don't need. It's not like I need the million to get out. I've got I could do it. That's not what it's about. To me, it's always been about leading people. Like I like everything we've talked about on this call. That's what makes me wake up in the morning. Getting other people's ideas, taking an idea, running it out, then seeing how it comes out to fruition, rewarding that person for that great idea. Like that's what makes being a CEO so valuable to a guy like me, and I'm sure yourself. So, and I said we were going to come right back to the business, Anthony. Here we are. I'm asking about you personally. Here we are with business. So, besides going to your house in Italy, what are things you like to do for fun? Are you a sports guy? Are you a water recreation guy? What do you like?
Hockey, skiing, and growing up in Canada, of course, those are things that just fall into your lap. My daughter loves to ski, and we ski together, and I love skiing. We spend a lot of time in Florida, and that's where our house is in the US, and we live there. And we spend a lot of time, in the water and water sports and stuff. So, but for me, the biggest thing is, I just want to spend time with the family. I don't care what I'm doing as long as I'm spending time with the family.
We're in Florida.
We're in Juno Beach.
Okay, so I have an apartment in Fort Lauderdale.
Okay,
so,
we're not too far, right? So we're part of Palm Beach. So yeah, so Juneau's just tiny little town and beautiful, and is God, it's a sanctuary for me.
Yeah, we should actually. I mean, if I'm ever in the area, I'll have to send you a message. Maybe we'll go to dinner
Definitely.
or something. So this is the point where we get to. So like, what do all the things you've been in? Sounds like you've so far leading an amazing life as a CEO, and then with your family and the stuff you do. But at the end of the day, what do you want your legacy to be, Anthony?
I guess, when I think back, what I want it to be is I want people to remember, that I cared. That's really what it's all about. I cared, and what I did was not selfish, but more about how do I make everybody else something. That's the most important thing, and it's true for me. It's, it's funny because I'm not a real emotional person, when I had to let go of those people from COVID, and we did that massive layoff at the time, it was one of the first few times that I have ever cried in public. It was heart-wrenching for me. And the most, exciting times besides, going back to the day my daughter was born and everything else that goes with that, when I was able to say I've hired everybody back and I paid everybody back, that for me is the biggest reward that I've ever had and I've ever felt. And it wasn't, that I'm looking for accolades from that perspective, but it just was the right thing to do. I want to be known as a guy that, did what was right, not because it was needed, but it was the right thing to do. I'd rather lose my job for doing the right thing than, sitting by the sideline and not doing something. When I was younger, I'd get into fights because I would believe that I'm not a big guy, but I was never afraid to stand up for what was right. And if I felt something was wrong, I was right in the mix of it and just making sure it got corrected.
Anthony, I have to tell you what a pleasure it was for me to have you on the show. I think that if that's what you want your legacy to be, you are well on your way. You're actually probably already there, so just don't change, and then you're fine. And I will say that, in an hour, I don't know if you can really say you became friends with somebody in an hour, but I'd like to say in this situation, I think it happened. I think what you're doing is inspiring. I think it's fantastic. I think you've taught me personally to do some things and to stay more focused, believe in what you're passionate about, enjoy your family while you have them all. So I think you're a fantastic human being, and I am happy that you shared an hour with me on automating success.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here, and you are a friend.